Yes, how much? Sorry? Nine. Can you turn that light? Thanks.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Samsarada Nalidaloka Tranaya Karunya Gana Gana Tvam Praptasya Kalyana Gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Mahaprabhu ki tan nitya gita vaditra madhyan manasodasena romanchakam shrutaranga bhajo vande guru shri charanarvindam Shri Vigraharadhan Nityanana Shringaratan Mandirmarjanado Yuktasya Bhaktans Chaniyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Swadvana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sandhyan Kritvaiva Triptimbha Jata Sadaiva Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Shri Radhika Madhavyarapara Madhurya Leela Gunarupanam Nam Pratishana Swadanlolupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Nikunjayuno Ratikeli Siddhai Yayali Bhiryuktira Pekshaniya Tatra Didakshat Ativallabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Sakshadharittvena samasta shastre uktastatha bhavyata eva sadvi kintu prabhoyaha priya eva tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado Yasya aprasadan nagati kutopi Dhyayan stuvam stasya yashastri sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Namaste Narasimhaya Prahlad Daine Hiranyakashipurvakshaha Shilatanka Nakhalaye Ito Nrsimha Parto Nrsimho Yato Yato Yami Tato Nrsimha Bahe Nrsimho Hridaye Nrsimho Nrsimha Madim Sharanam Prapadaye Tava Kara Kamalavare Nakham Adbhuta Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubhringam Keshavadhrita Narhari Rupa Jai Jagdish Hare Jaya Jagdish Hare Jai Jagdish Hare नृसिंहदेव भगवान की जय भक्त श्रोमणी प्रहलाद महाराज की जय वृंदाय तुलसी देव्याय प्रियाय केशवश्च च विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्यवत्यै नमो नमः वृंदाय तुलसी देव्याय प्रियाय केशवश्च च विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्यवत्यै नमो नमः वृंदाय तुलसी देव्याय प्रियाय केशवश्च च विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्यवत्यै नमो नमः नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो ए अभिलाषी ये तो मार शरण लय तारा वंशा पूर्ण हो कृपा करी करो तारे वृंदावन वासी मोराया विलास कुंजे दियोवास नयने रिबो सदा युगल रूप राशि ए निवेदना धरा सखीरनुगता करो सेवा अधिकार दिए करो निज दासी दीना कृष्ण दासे कय ए ना मोरा श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा ये न भासी यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्मत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्मत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्मत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे वृंदाय तुलसी देव्यै प्रियाय केशवस्य च विष्णुभक्तिप्रदे देवी सत्यवत्यै नमो नमः वृंदाय तुलसी देव्यै प्रियाय केशवस्य च विष्णुभक्तिप्रदे देवी सत्यवत्यै नमो नमः वृंदाय तुलसी देव्यै प्रियाय केशवस्य च विष्णुभक्तिप्रदे देवी सत्यवत्यै नमो नमः श्री श्री शिक्षा इस ग्रुप ओके 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 Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 4, Text 40. Translation. Seeing the wonderful and effulgent form of Supreme Personality of Godhead, Prajapati Daksha was first somewhat afraid. Seeing the wonderful and effulgent form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Prajapati Daksha was first somewhat afraid, but then he was very pleased to see the Lord, and he fell to the ground like a stick, Dandavat, to offer his respect to the Lord. Text 41. Translation. As from previous few text 41. Okay. Shall I start from 30 minutes? Okay. Text 30. Translation. The Supreme Brahman Krishna is the ultimate resting place and source of everything. Everything is done by him, everything belongs to him, and everything is offered to him. He is the ultimate objective, and whether acting or causing other to act, he is the ultimate doer. There are many causes, higher and low, but since he is the cause of all causes, he is well known as Supreme Brahman who existed before all activities. He is one without a second and has no other cause. I therefore offer my respect unto him. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is the original cause as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava. Even this material world, which is conducted under the modes of material nature, is caused by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who therefore also has an intimate relationship with the material world. If the material world were not a part of his body, the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Cause, would be incomplete. Therefore, we hear Vasudevam Sarvam Iti Sa Mahatma Sa Durlabha. If one knows that Vasudev is the original cause of all causes, he becomes a perfect Mahatma. The Brahma Samhita 5.1 declare Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karan Karanam. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme controller. He has an eternal, blissful, and spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, for he is the prime cause of all causes. The Supreme Brahman, Tad Brahma, is the cause of all causes, but he has no cause. Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karan Karanam. Govinda, Krishna, is the original cause of all causes, but he has no cause for his appearance as Govinda. Govinda expands in multifarious form, but nevertheless they are one. As confirmed by Madhvacharya, Ananya Shradsha Bhavad Eko Rupad, Krishna has no cause nor any equal, and he is one because his various forms as Swansha and Vibhinansha are non-different from himself. Text 31, translation. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the all-pervading Supreme Personality of Godhead, who possesses unlimited transcendental qualities. Acting from within the core of his heart of all the philosophers who propagate various views, he causes them to forget their own souls while sometimes agreeing and sometimes disagreeing among themselves. Thus, he creates within this material world a situation in which they are unable to come to a conclusion. I offer my obeisances unto him. Purport. Since time immemorial, or since the creation of cosmic manifestation, the conditioned soul have formed various parties of philosophical speculation. But this is not true of the devotees. Non-devotees have different ideas of creation, maintenance, and annihilation, and therefore they are called Vadis and Prativadis, proponent and counter-proponent. It is understood from the statement of Mahabharata that there are many munis or speculators. All speculators must disagree with other speculators, otherwise why should there be so many opposing parties concerned with ascertaining the supreme cause? Philosophy means finding the ultimate cause. As Vedanta Sutra very reasonably says, Athato Brahma Jigyasa. Human life is meant for understanding the ultimate cause. Devotees accept that the ultimate cause is Krishna because this conclusion is supported by all Vedic literatures and also by Krishna himself, who says, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava. I am the source of all, I am the source of everything. Devotees have no problem understanding the ultimate cause of everything, but non-devotees must face very opposing elements because everyone who wants to be the prominent philosopher invites his own way. In India, there are many parties of philosophers such as Dvaitavadis, Advaitavadis, Visheshikas, Mimanshikas, Mayavadis, Swabhavavadis, and each of them opposes the other. Similarly, in the Western countries, there are also many philosophers with different view of creation, life, maintenance, and annihilation. Thus, it is undoubtedly a fact that there are countless philosophers throughout the world, each of them contradict the other. Now, one might ask, why are there so many philosophers if the ultimate goal of philosophy is one? Undoubtedly, the ultimate cause is one, the Supreme Brahman. As Arjun told Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 10.12, Param Brahma Param Dhama Pavitram Paramam Bhavan. You are the Supreme Brahman, the ultimate, the supreme abode and purifier, the ultimate truth, and the eternal divine person. You are the primeval God, transcendental and original, and you are unborn and all-pervading beauty. Non-devotee speculators, however, do not accept an ultimate cause, Sarva Karan Karanam, because they are ignorant and bewildered concerning the soul and its activity. Even though some of them have a vague idea of soul, many controversies arises and the philosophical speculators can never reach a conclusion. All of these speculators are envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 16.19 and 20, tan aham dushta karunan, meaning those who are envious and mischievous, who are lowest among men, are cast by me into the ocean of material existence, into various demonic species of life, attaining repeated birth among the species of demonic life. Such person can never approach me. Gradually, they sink down to the most abominable type of existence. Because of their envy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, non devotees are born in demonic family life after life. They are great offenders, and because of their offenses, the Supreme Lord keeps them always bewildered. Kurvanti chasham muhur atma moham. The Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, purposefully keeps them in darkness. The great authority Parashar, the father of Vyasadeva, explains the Supreme Personality of Godhead thus. The demonic speculator cannot understand the transcendental qualities, form, pastimes, strength, knowledge, and opulence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which are all free from material contamination. These speculators are envious of the existence of the Lord, Jagat Ahur Anivisharam. Their conclusion is that the entire cosmic manifestation has no controller but is just working naturally. Thus, they are kept in constant darkness, birth after birth, and cannot understand the real cause of all causes. This is the reason why there are so many schools of philosophical speculation.
Thank you.
650.
50.
15.
So what's it?
Text 32. Translation. There are two parties, namely the theist and the atheist. The theist who accepts the super soul finds the spiritual cause through mystic yoga. Thus, the Sankhite, however, who merely analyze the material elements, comes to the conclusion of impersonalism and does not accept a supreme cause, whether Bhagwan, Paramatma, or even Brahman. Instead, he is preoccupied with the superfluous external activities of the material nature. Ultimately, however, both parties demonstrate the absolute truth because although they offer opposing statement, their object is the same, ultimate cause. They are both approaching the same supreme Brahman to whom I offer my respectful obeisances. Purport. Actually, there are two sides of this argument. Some says that the absolute truth has no form, nirakar, and others say that the absolute has a form, sakar. Therefore, the word form is the common factor. Although some accept it, however, whereas others try to negate it. Since the devotees consider the word form, akar, the common factor for both, he offers his respectful obeisances to the form, although other may go on arguing about whether the absolute has a form or not. In this verse, the word yoga shankhyo is very important. Yoga means bhakti yoga because yogis also accept the existence of all pervading supreme soul and try to see the supreme soul within their heart. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 12.13.1, the devotees tries to come directly in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whereas the yogis tries to find the super soul within the heart by meditation. Thus, both directly and indirectly, yoga means bhakti yoga. Shankhya, however, means physical study of the cosmic situation through speculative knowledge. This is generally known as Jnana Shastra. The Sankhites are attached to the impersonal Brahman, but the absolute truth is known in three ways: Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagwan iti Shabdaye. The absolute truth is one, but some accept him as impersonal Brahman, some as the super soul existing everywhere, and some as Bhagwan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The central point is the absolute truth. Although the impersonalist and personalist fight with one another, they focus upon the same Param Brahman, the same absolute truth. In the Yoga Shastra, Krishna is described as follows: Krishnam Pishanganam Ambu Kesham. Thus, the pleasing appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's bodily feature, his limbs, his dress, are described. The Sankhya Shastra, however, denies the existence of Lord's transcendental form. The Sankhya Shastra says that the Supreme Absolute Truth has no hands, no legs, no name. Hai Anama Rupa Guna Pani Padam. The Vedic mantra says, Apani Pado Javana Grihata. The Supreme Lord has no leg and hands, but he can accept whatever is offered to him. Actually, such statements accept that the Supreme has hands and legs, but deny that he has material hands and legs. That is why the Absolute is called Aprakrita. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has a Satchit Anand Vigraha, a form of eternity, knowledge, and bliss, not a material form. The Sankhites or Gyanis deny the material form, and the devotees also know very well that the absolute truth Bhagwan has no material form. Ishvara Paramakrishna Satchidananda Vigraha. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme controller. He has an eternal blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, for he is the prime cause of all causes. The conception of absolute without hands and legs and the conception of the absolute with hands and legs are apparently contradictory, but they both coincide with the same truth about the supreme absolute person. Therefore, the word vastu nisthayo, which is used herein, indicate that both the yogis and Sankhites have faith in the reality but are arguing about it from the different viewpoint of material and spiritual identities. Param Brahma or Brihat is a common point. The Sankhites and the yogis are both situated in the same Brahman, but they differ because of different angle of vision. The directions given by the Bhakti Shastra point, the directions given by the Bhakti Shastra The direction given by the Bhakti Shastra point one in the perfect direction, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead says in Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktaya Mam Abhijanati. Only by devotional service am I to be known. The Bhakta know that the Supreme Person has no material form, whereas the Jnanis simply deny the material form. One should therefore take shelter of the Bhakti Marga, the path of devotion, then everything will be clear. Jnanis concentrate on the Virat Rupa, the gigantic universal form of the Lord. This is a good system in the beginning for those who are extremely materialistic. But there is no need to think continuously of the Virat Rupa. When Arjun was shown the Virat Rupa of Krishna, he saw it, but he did not want to see it perpetually. He therefore requested the Lord to return to his original form as a two-armed Krishna. In conclusion, learned scholars find no contradiction in the devotee's concentration upon the spiritual form of the Lord. In this regard, Srila Madhvacharya says that less intelligent non-devotees think that their conclusion is the ultimate, but because devotees are completely learned, they can understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate goal. Text 33, translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is inconceivably opulent, who is devoid of all material names, forms, pastimes, and who is all pervading, is specially merciful to the devotees who worship his lotus feet. Thus, he exhibits transcendental form and names with his different pastimes. May that Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose form is eternal, full of knowledge, bliss, be merciful to me. Purport. In regard to the significant word Anam Rupaha, Sridhar Swami says, Prakrita Nam Rupa Rohita Pi. The word Anama, which means having no name, indicates that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has no material name. Simply by chanting the name of Narayan to call his son, Ajamil attained salvation. This means that Narayan is not an ordinary mundane name, it is non material. The word Anama therefore indicates that the name of the Supreme Lord do not belong to this material world. The vibrations of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is not a material sound, and similarly, the form of the Lord and his appearance and activities are all non material. To show his causeless mercy to the devotees as well as to the non devotees, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appears in this material world with name, form, and pastimes, all of which are transcendental. Unintelligent men who cannot understand this think that these names, forms, and pastimes are material, and therefore they deny that he has the name or a form. Considered with scrutiny, the conclusion of non devotees who says that the God has no name and that the devotees who know that his name is not material are practically the same. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has no material name, form, birth, appearance, disappearance, but nevertheless, he takes his birth, Janma, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 4.6. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 4.6. Although the Lord is unborn, Aja, and his body never undergoes material changes, he nevertheless appears as an incarnation, maintaining himself always in the transcendental stage, Shuddha Sattva. Thus, he exhibits his transcendental form, names, and activities. That is his special mercy toward his devotees. Other may continue merely arguing about whether the absolute truth has no form or not, but when a devotee by the grace of the Lord sees the Lord personally, he becomes spiritually ecstatic. Unintelligent person says, unintelligent persons say that the Lord does nothing. Actually, he has nothing to do, but nevertheless, he has to do everything because without his sanction, no one can do anything. The unintelligent, however, cannot see how he is working and how the entire material nature is working under his direction. His different potencies work perfectly. It is mentioned in Svetastara Upanishad 6.8. He has nothing to do personally, for since his potencies are perfect, everything is immediately done by his will. Person to whom the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not revealed cannot see how he is working, and therefore they think that even if there is God, he has nothing to do or has no particular name. Actually, the Lord's name already exists because of his transcendental activities. The Lord is sometimes called Guna Karma Nama because he is named according to his transcendental activities. For example, Krishna means all attractive. This is the Lord's name because his transcendental qualities make him very attractive. As a small boy, he lifted Govardhan Hill, and in his childhood, he killed many demons. Such activities are very attractive, and therefore he is sometimes called Giridhari, Madhusudana, Agha Nishudhana, and so on. Because he acts as a son of Nanda Maharaj, he is called Nanda Tanuja. These names already exist, but since non devotees cannot understand the name of the Lord, he is sometimes called Anama or nameless. This means that he has no material name. All his activities are spiritual, and therefore he has spiritual names. Generally, less intelligent men are under the impression that the Lord has no form. Therefore, he appears in his original form as Krishna, Satchit Ananda Vigraha, to carry out his mission of participating in the battle of Kurukshetra and pastimes to protect the devotees and vanquish the demon. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam. This is his mercy. For those who think that he has no form and no work to do, Krishna comes to show that indeed he works. He works he works so gloriously that no one else can perform such uncommon act. Although he appeared as a human being, he married 16,108 wives, which is impossible for a human being to do. The Lord performs such activities to show people how great he is, how affectionate he is, and how merciful he is. Although his original name is Krishna, Krishnastu Bhagwan Swayam, he acts in ultimate ways, and therefore, according to his work, he has many thousands of names. Text 34. Translation. As the air carries various characteristics of the physical element, like the aroma of the flower and color resulting from the mixture of dust in the air, the Lord appears. The Lord appears through lower system of worship according to one's desire. Although he appears as a demigod and not in his original form. What is the use of these other forms? May the original Supreme Personality of Godhead please fulfill my desire. Purport. The impersonalists imagine the various demigods to be the form of the Lord. For example, the Mayavadi worship 5 demigods, Pancha Upasana. They do not actually believe in the form of the Lord, but for the sake of worship, they imagine some form to be God. Generally, they imagine a form of Vishnu, a form of Shiva, a form of Ganesha, Sun God, and Durga. This is called Panchopasana. Daksha, however, wanted to worship not an imaginary form but the supreme form of Lord Shri Krishna. In this regard, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes the difference between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and an ordinary living being. As pointed out in the previous verse, Sarvam Pumam Deva Gunanam. The omnipotent Supreme Lord knows everything, but the living being does not actually know the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, I know everything, but no one knows me. This is the difference between the Supreme Lord and an ordinary living entity. In a prayer to Srimad Bhagavatam, Queen Kunti says, My dear Lord, you exist inside and outside, yet in a prayer in Srimad Bhagavatam, Queen Kunti says, My dear Lord, you exist inside and outside, yet no one can see you. The conditioned soul cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by speculative knowledge or by imagination. One must therefore know the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He reveals himself, but he cannot be understood by speculation. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14.29, it is mentioned, My Lord, if one is favored by even a slight trace of mercy of your lotus feet, he can understand the greatness of your personality. But those who speculate to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead are unable to know you, even though they continue to study the Vedas for many years. This is the verdict of the Shastra. An ordinary man may be a great philosopher and may speculate upon what the absolute truth is, what his form is, where he is existing, but he cannot understand these truths. Sevan mukhi jivado swam eva spruti adaha. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead only through devotional service. This is also explained in the this is also explained by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself in Bhagavad Gita 18.55. Bhaktaya mam abhijanati yavan yash chashmi tatvatah. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead as He is only by devotional service. Unintelligent person want to imagine or concoct a form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but devotees want to worship the actual personality of Godhead. Therefore, Daksh prays, one may think of you as person, imperson, or imaginary, but I wish to pray to your lordship that you fulfill my desire to see you as you actually are. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that this verse is specially meant for impersonalist who thinks that he himself is the supreme because there is no difference between the living being and the God. The Mayavadi philosopher thinks that there is only one supreme truth and that he is also that supreme truth. Actually, this is not knowledge but foolishness, and this verse is specially meant for such fools whose knowledge has been stolen by illusion. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that such a person, Jnani Manaha, thinks themselves very advanced, but actually they are unintelligent. In this in regard to this verse, Srila Madhvacharya says, Srila Madhvacharya says, there are three classes of men: the lowest, Adhama, those in the middle, Madhyama, and the best, Uttama. The lowest, Adhama, thinks that there is no difference between God and the living entity except that the living entity is under designation, whereas the absolute truth has no designation. In their opinion, as soon as the designation of the material bodies are dissolved, the jiva, the living entity, will mix with the supreme. They give the argument of Ghatakash Patakash, in which the body is compared to a pot with the sky within and the sky without. When the pot breaks, the sky inside becomes one with the sky outside, and so the impersonalist says that the living being becomes one with the Supreme. This is their argument, but Madhvacharya says that such an argument is put forward by the lowest class of men. Another class of men cannot ascertain that the actual form of what the actual form of supreme is, but they agree that there is a supreme who controls the activities of the ordinary living being. Such philosophers are accepted as mediocre. The best, however, are those who understand that the Supreme Lord Satchit Anand Vigraha. His form is completely spiritual, full of bliss, and completely distinct from that of the conditioned soul or any other living entity. Uttamaha tu Harim Purushaha. Such philosophers are the best because they know the Supreme Personality of Godhead reveals himself directly to worshipper in various modes of material nature. They know that there are 33 million demigods just to convince the conditioned soul that there is a supreme power and to induce him to agree to worship one of these demigods so that by the association of the devotees they may be able to understand that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. As Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Mataha Parantaraha Nanyam Kinchit Asti Dhananjaya. There is no absolute truth superior to me. Aham Adirhi Devanam. I am the origin of all the demigods. Aham Sarvasya Prabhava. I am the supreme to everyone, even to Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and other demigods. These are the conclusions of the Shastras, and one who accepts these conclusions should be considered as a first-class philosopher. Such a philosopher knows that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Lord of the demigods. Text 35 to 39. Translation. Srila Sukdev Goswami said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari, who is extremely affectionate to his devotees, are was very pleased by the prayer offered by Daksha.
What am I reading?
Today we will read 40. Right now I am reading 35 to 39. Srila Sukdev Goswami said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari, who is extremely affectionate to his devotees, was very pleased by the prayers offered by Daksha, and thus he appeared at that holy place known as Agna, known as Agha Marshan. O Parikshit Maharaj, best of Kuru dynasty, the Lord's lotus feet rested on the shoulders of his carrier, Garuda, and he appeared with 8 long, mighty, very beautiful arms. In his hand, he held a disc, conch shell, sword, shield, arrow, bow, rope, and club. In each hand, a different weapon, all brilliantly shining. His garments were yellow and his bodily hue deep bluish. His eyes and face were very cheerful and were very cheerful, and from his neck to his feet hung a long garland of flowers. His chest was decorated with a Kastuba jewel and a mark of Sri Vatsa. On his head was a gorgeous round helmet, and his ears were decorated with earrings resembling sharks. All these ornaments were uncommonly beautiful. The Lord wore a golden belt on his waist, bracelet on his arms, ring on his finger, and ankle bell on his feet. Thus decorated by various ornaments, Lord Hari, who is attractive to all the living entities of the three worlds, is known as Purushottama, the best personality. He was accompanied by a great devotee like Narada, Nanda, and all the principal demigods, led by the heavenly king Indra and the resident of various upper planetary systems such as Siddhas, Gandharvalokas, and Charanlokas, situated on both sides of the Lord and behind him as well. These devotees offered him prayers continuously. Text 40, translation. Seeing that wonderful and effulgent form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Prajapati Daksha was first somewhat afraid, but then he was very pleased to see the Lord, and he fell to the ground like a stick, Dandavata, to offer his respects to the Lord. Text 41, translation. As rivers are filled with water flowing from a mountain, all of Daksha's senses were filled with pleasure. Because of his highly elevated happiness, Daksha could not say anything but simply remained flat on the ground. Purport. When one actually realizes or sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is filled with complete happiness. For example, when Dhruva Maharaj saw the Lord in his presence, he said, Swamin Krithartho Sumi Varam na Yase. My dear Lord, I have nothing to ask from you. Now I am completely satisfied. Similarly, when Prajapati Daksha saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his presence, he simply fell flat, unable to speak or ask for anything. Text 42. Although Prajapati Daksha could not say anything, when the Lord who knows everyone's heart saw his devotee prostrate in that manner and desiring to increase the population, he addressed him as follows. Text 43, translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O most fortunate Prachetas, because of your great faith in me, you have attained the supreme devotional ecstasy. Indeed, because of your ecstasies combined with exalted devotion, your life is now successful. You have achieved complete perfection. Purport. As the Lord Himself confirms in Bhagavad Gita 8.15, one reaches the highest perfection when he attains the fortune of realizing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mam Upetya Punarjanma mentioned, after attaining me, the great soul who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement teaches one to follow the path toward the topmost perfection simply by performing devotional service. Text 44. Translation. My dear Prajapati Daksha, you have performed extreme austerities for the welfare and growth of the world. My desire also is that everyone within this world be happy. I am therefore very pleased with you because you are endeavoring to fulfill my desire for the welfare of the entire world. Purport. After every dissolution of the material cosmos, all the living entities take shelter in the body of Karunadakshay Vishnu. And when creation takes place again, they come forth from his body in the various species to resume their activities. Why does the creation take place in such a way that the living entities are put into conditioned life to suffer the threefold miseries imposed upon them by the material nature? Here the Lord says to Daksha, you desire to benefit all living entities, and this is also my desire. The living entity who come in contact with the material world are meant to be corrected. All the living entities within the material world have revolted against the service of the Lord, and therefore they remain within this material world as ever conditioned, Nitya Baddha, taking birth again and again. There is a chance, of course, of their being liberated, but nevertheless, the conditioned souls not taking advantage of this opportunity continue in a life of sense gratification, and thus they are punished by birth and death again and again. This is the law of nature, as Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 7.14. Deva Yesha Gunmai Mam Maya Durataya. This divine energy of mind, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. Elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita 15.7, the Lord says, Mame vancho jiv loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha. The living entity in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to the conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which includes the mind. The living entity's struggle for existence within the material world is due to their rebellious nature. Unless the living entity surrenders to Krishna, he must continue this life of struggle. The Krishna consciousness movement is not a fad. It is a bona fide movement intended to promote the welfare of all conditioned souls by trying to elevate everyone to the platform of Krishna consciousness. If one does not come to this platform, he must continue in the material existence perpetually, sometimes in the upper planet and sometimes in the lower planet. As confirmed in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 20.118, कबू सर्वगे उठाया कबू नरके डुबाया. The conditioned soul sometimes descends into nescience and sometimes gets some relief by being relatively freed from it. This is the life of the conditioned soul. Prajapati Daksha is trying to benefit the conditioned soul by begetting them to give them a life with a chance for liberation. Liberation means surrender to Krishna. If one begets children with the purpose of training them to surrender to Krishna, fatherhood is very good. Similarly, when a spiritual master trains the conditioned soul to become Krishna conscious, his position is successful. If one gives the conditioned soul a chance to become Krishna conscious, all his activities are approved by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is extremely pleased, as stated here. Prito Ham. Following the example of previous Acharya, all the members of Krishna consciousness movement should try to benefit the conditioned soul by inducing them to become Krishna conscious and giving them all facilities to do so. Such activities constitute real welfare work. By such activities, a preacher or anyone who endeavors to spread Krishna consciousness is recognized by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As the Lord Himself confirms in Bhagavad Gita 18.68 and 69, या idam paramam guhyam mad bhaktesha abhidhashate. For one who explains the supreme secret to the devotees, devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end he will come back to me. There is no servant in this world more dearer to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. Text 45. Translation. Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the Manus, all Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, the Manus, all the other demigods in the higher planetary system, and you Prajapatis who are increasing the population are working for the benefit of all living entities. Thus, you expansions of my marginal energy are incarnation of my various qualities. Purport. There are various type of incarnations or expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The expansions of his personal self or Vishnu Tattva are called Swaansh expansion, whereas the living entities who are not Vishnu Tattva but Jiva Tattva are called Vibhin Ansha, separated expansion. Although Prajapati Daksha is not on the same level as Lord Brahma or Lord Shiva, he is compared to them because he engages in the service of the Lord. In the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is not that Lord Brahma is considered. In the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thank you, Guru Maharaj.
संसार दावा नलिलीढलोक प्राणाय कारुण्य घना घनन्तं प्राप्तस्य कल्याण गुणानवश्य वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणारविन्दं महाप्रभु कीर्तन नृत्य गीत वादित्रमाध्यं मनसो रसेन रोमाञ्चकम्पासुतरङ्गभाजो वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणारविन्दं श्रीविग्रहाराधन नित्यानाना सिङ्गारतन्मन्दिरमार्जनादो युक्तस्य भक्तांश्च नियुञ्जतोऽपि वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणारविन्दं चतुर्विधा श्रीभगवत्प्रसाद सादन्न तृप्तान् हरिभक्तसङ्घान् कृत्वैव तृप्तिं भजत सदैव वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दं श्रीराधिका माधवयोरपार माधुर्यलीला गुणरूपनाम्नां प्रतीक्षणा स्वादनलोलुपस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दं निकुञ्जयुनोरतिकेलिसिध्ये ययालिभिर्युक्तिरपेक्षणीया तत्रादिदक्षा अतिवल्लभस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दं साक्षाद्धरित्वेन समस्तशास्त्रे तथा भावतैव तद्धिः किन्तु प्रभोर्यः प्रिय एव तस्य वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणारविन्दम् यस्य प्रसादात् भगवत्प्रसादो यस्य प्रसादान्न गति कुतोऽपि ध्यायन्स्तुवंस्तस्य यशस्त्रिसन्ध्यं वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम् नमस्ते नरसिंहाय प्रह्लादलाददायिने हिरण्याकशिपूर्वक्षः तिलकङ्कनखारितो नरसिंह परतो नरसिंह यतो यत्त्वयामि ततो नरसिंह बाहे नरसिंह हृदये नरसिंह डर के आओ नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपदे तब कर कमल वरे नखमदभूतसिंहं दलिता हिरण्यकशिपो तनुभृङ्गं केशवघृत नरहरिरूप जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय नरसिंहदेव 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 जय नरसिंहदेव जय प्रहलाद महाराज प्रहलाद महाराज प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय सद्भक्ति विनाशक श्री नरसिंहदेव भगवान की जय भक्त सेवनी प्रहलाद महाराज की जय जगत प्रभुपाद की जय नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो लेके आ रहे ए अभिलाषी ये तुम्हार शरण लाए सर्वंश पूर्ण कृपा करी कर तारे वृंदावनवासी मोर अभिलाष विलास कुंजे दियो वास नयने हरिबो सदा युगल रूप राशि वेदना धरो सफेरा सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी दिन कृष्ण दास कहे श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमी सदा नवासी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः देवी तुलसी महारानी की जय परम विक्रम महाविष्णु ज्वलंतम सत्यम जय नरसिंह जय नरसिंह जय 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 श्री नरसिंह।